Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We have not got rid of Abdurraheem just yet. We have a bonus video specially for you, going into a little bit more detail on some of the conversations you might have with Christians and atheists. So Abdurraheem, in regards to Christianity first, some Christians will say, well, Jesus is God. He's able to do anything. He is God. Or they might even say, well, he's actually Son of God.
Yeah.
How would we deal with that contention specifically?
This is a very important issue, and contrary to what many people may think, GORAP is actually most effective with Christians.
Right.
Now, if we go back to the discussion about God's existence, what I often do with Christians is ask them to rationalize the existence of God. So I say, you explain to me how you know this universe has a creator. By and large, sooner or later, the Christian will come up with pretty much the same arguments. Of course, Christians do believe that there is one unique, self-sufficient, eternal creator who is free from space and time. However, they immediately contradict that belief by claiming that Jesus is that creator,
Right.
or that Jesus is part of the creator or part of a trinity along with that creator. Now, the problem with this from the Christian's point of view is that this is a belief that can never be explained through reason. In other words, it is irrational.
Right.
And it's not only irrational, it's impossible by the very definition of impossibility, because what their belief requires is that you believe that something is its opposite.
Right.
That's why right at the beginning I like to introduce what I call it universal principles. I mean, that may just be complicated terminology for people, but they're just the principles of common sense. Something doesn't come from nothing. Where you see something ordered, something's ordered it. And these are things that can lead us to know that God exists, but also something can't be its opposite. So I gave the example of the circle.
Yeah.
The circle can't be a square and be a circle at the same time. You could take a circle, fit it inside a square, or take a square, fit it inside a circle. You can stretch the circle to make a square, but you can't have the circle being a square and being a circle both at the same time. But this is the problem. The very reason and logic we use to show that there must be a creator, a unique creator who is different from the universe, also immediately necessitates or proves that Jesus or Krishna or Buddha or any other human, they can't be God.
Right.
Because by definition, God is infinite. By definition, human beings are finite. By definition, the nature of God is self-sufficient. By definition, the nature of human beings is they are needy. Yeah. So what we saw manifest in Jesus is not godly attributes, they are human attributes. What was manifest about him is that he ate food, he breathed air, he was born, he grew up, he was circumcised, he rode a donkey, he felt hungry,
Yeah.
he got tempted. These are all human attributes. These are not the attributes of God. And the point is, they would say, well, he was both God and man, but something by definition can't be, because God is the opposite of what man. They are opposites, they're on the opposite scale of the spectrum.
Right.
God is creator, human is creation. God is self-sufficient, humans are needy. God is the one who is worshipped, humans are the ones who worship.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it goes on and on. Yeah.
Sure.
God does not pray to anyone, but Jesus prayed.
Yeah.
So that's the point. And this is the point that Allah makes in the Quran. That if God wanted to destroy Jesus and Mary and everything in the heavens and the earth, who could stop him? Meaning, Jesus was powerless before the power of God. Therefore, he can't be the same as God.
Sure, sure.
Right? So, I mean, the Christian can believe this if they want to, but
Yeah.
they can never, and that's why we go back to, and that's when I said, I had this conversation with the Christian, when he brought this up, I said, what happened to the man in the red light? Remember we agreed to use common sense and reason? Okay? And it's very problematic from other angles as well, because now the Christian is telling us that a person is going to go to hell forever for refusing to believe something impossible.
Right.
How can we describe God as being just? How can you describe God as being just when he is going to burn people for refusing to believe an impossibility? And the way that I often present this to the Christian in a very stark and a very real and a very poignant way, I say, look, imagine you're standing in front of God and I'm standing in front of God on the day of judgment. And God says to you, God says to me, why didn't you believe Jesus was God? Why didn't you believe that I was Jesus, or Jesus was me, or Jesus was God, or whatever way God would put it, right? Well, I would say, how can I believe you're the creator of the heavens and the earth? Jesus was a little man on a dot of a planet that is a dot, and a galaxy that is a dot, and the whole universe is a dot before your throne. How can I believe that this was equal to you? You're the creator of all things. How can I say such a thing about you? If God picks me up and puts me in hell, I'll never feel that justice was done.
Yeah.
I will never feel I deserved it. But if a Christian stands in front of God on the day of judgment, as they will, and God will say to them, why did you worship this human I created and you made him equal with me? What are you going to say? And if God picks you up and puts you in hell as a Christian, you'll know you deserve to be there. Until now, I don't know any Christian who's been able to say anything to that.
Right.
Now, one of the comebacks Christians have is, well, God can do anything. This is a classic. God can do anything. And obviously, that's highly problematic. So what I would say is, well, look, as Muslims, there's a certain way we talk about God. We don't like to say God can't do this and God can't do that. It's not the way to talk about God. However, in reality, we're going to be confronted with one of two things. Either we would say God could do it, but he never would, or God can't do it.
Right.
So what I usually do is give an example to a Christian. The example I often give Christians is I often say to them, can God do something evil?
Right.
Now, their reply is one of two things. Either they say, no, God can't do anything evil. I say, why not? Because God is good. I say, but you said God can do anything.
Yeah.
So that they've contradicted themselves.
Sure.
Or I say to them, or they say, God could do something evil if he wanted to, but he never would. I'll say, why not? Because that's not his nature. They reply, God is good, and the good God does not do evil things. I say, but it's the same with all of God's attributes. Just as a good God doesn't do evil things, an eternal God doesn't become a temporary man. A self-sufficient God does not become a needy person. It's the same thing. The same rule applies not only to God's goodness, but all of the attributes of God. You can either say one of the two things, no, God can't do it, because God is so far removed from being able to doing evil. Because it's the attribute, the quality of God that God is good, but it's also the quality of God that he's self-sufficient.
Yeah.
That he's unconfined by space and time and so on and so forth. So this is basically what one says to the Christians.
So what if they say, well, okay, that's fine, but Jesus is actually Son of God? How would you respond to that?
This is a little bit more tricky.
Right.
In the sense that the term Son of God has a meaning that is, it has a potential meaning that is, I wouldn't say harmless, but it has a sort of neutral, it has a potential neutral meaning. But it also has a meaning that is just simply, again, ridiculous in respect to God. So the way I use an example. I say, what do you mean by Son of God? When you say he's the Son of God, what actually do you mean by that? Do you mean that he's literally the Son of God, begotten, not made, as they claim? Because if you're saying that, then you'll have to say that God had sexual intercourse. because that's literally what a literal son is.
Yeah.
Literally, a son is a product of sexual intercourse. Are you saying God had sex? I would say it to them, quite frankly. Now, most Christians would say no. If they say yes, then I'd honestly say there's no conversation with that person. I don't know what to say to someone at that stage, right? Most of them say, so what do you mean? So he's not really the Son of God then? He's not literally the Son of God? Do you mean sort of God adopted him as a son? Let me give you an example again of why this is absurd. Imagine I had, with me today a bowl,
right,
a fish bowl, and inside the fish bowl was a fish, Floppy. Yeah, Floppy the fish. Sure. I say to you, this is Floppy, my son.
Okay.
You'd say,
you're crazy.
You're crazy, that's a fish. I say, no, it's my son. The adoption papers are coming through next week. Under the new liberal laws that we have in this country. He eats dinner with me at the table. He has a room in the house. He's my son. But you'd say, look, that's a fish. You're a human being. You can't adopt a fish as your son. It doesn't have any meaning. You can only adopt something as a son which is like you, a human being. In fact, that's generally how humans historically have insulted each other, by calling them, you cow, you pig, you dog, you son of a whatever, right? Because why? You are equating a human being with something lower than it, okay? And so the point being here is that this is even more insulting to God. To say that God has a human being as a son is insulting. Because God is not like, we do share a lot of characteristics with animals. In other words, we're all temporary, we're all needy, we're all finite, we're all born, we'll all die. God does not have any of those attributes. It's the opposite.
It's the opposite.
So to equate the Creator with having as his son a human being is actually insulting God. It's insulting God, and it has no meaning. If by Son of God, what is meant is, as it has the use in Semitic languages, and this is where I don't want to go into this because I guess that would be another level of I don't want to go too much into it because we'd have a long conversation about the origins of the use of the term Son of God and what it meant in Hebrew languages and Roman, Latin and Greek and so on and so forth. But even in Semitic languages, in Arabic we have Abu Huraira. It doesn't mean he literally fathered a kitten.
Right.
It just means he's from the father of, he means he loves that thing. So if it means God loved him, fine. We don't have objection to that conceptually, although the use according to Islam is not allowed.
Right.
God has not allowed that. God has not allowed us to use this term in referring to other human beings, that we are the sons of God. We are the slaves. We are the created, we are the servants, the slaves, the creatures. Maybe the slave is not the best translation. We're the creatures of God.
Sure.
All created by God and totally under the power of God.
Sure.
So that's generally how I'd refer.
Okay, excellent. So now going into the discussion where you'd have some discussions with atheists, they will pose some general common contentions. For example, evolution. How would you deal with somebody that is talking about evolution to you?
Yeah, a lot of people, evolution, the idea of evolution is so ingrained in people now that they use evolution in areas where even science itself doesn't even claim that evolution has any place.
Right.
So, when you say, how did the universe exist? It evolved. But no scientist that I know of claims the universe evolved in the sense that they claim that evolution happens.
Right.
Because evolution, according to them, is a product of random mutation of DNA plus natural selection. So there has to be DNA. So there has to be a process of the DNA mutating and changing, which changes the blueprint of how the physiology, how outwardly a creature appears, and then through natural selection, the most beneficial and successful mutations and changes are selected, and that's how bit by bit, creatures change. And but there's no way of applying that to the universe. planets, stars and galaxies do not have DNA. There's no way for them to mutate and be randomly selected.
Yeah.
Yet the level of organization and the level of systemization in the universe is so much more than in biology.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, astrophysicists and nuclear physicists, and they've described, you know, at the atomic level, for example, the universe is like a massive mathematical formula. Mathematics is the language of the universe.
Right.
It's mathematical. We live in a mathematical universe. It's incredible to me how anyone could conclude except that there must be behind this, you know, an intelligence of a astronomical order.
Right.
How do you get such a mathematical universe? How? The logical explanation is there's wisdom and power and intelligence behind it of an amazing magnitude, and it would seem obvious to me that a person looking at all of that would know that. And there's no way for evolution to happen. Yeah, evolution is biological species are relatively simple, and that's something the Quran says, that your creation is nothing in terms of compared to the creation of the heavens and the earth. So, you know, the creation of human beings, of life on earth, is a relatively simple process compared to the creation of the universe itself. So evolution doesn't get a look in GORAP anyway. Because if a person says evolution, they said, I'm not talking about, you know, animals and creatures. The mobile phone is an inanimate object. It's not living. It may appear to you like it is. It's not. There's nothing living in a mobile phone. It's just a collection of various materials collected together in a clever way to make it work as a tool.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. We're not claiming when we use our GORAP, we avoid, and I think it's better to avoid things like, you know, the camels and the creatures. And although they're amazing and they are signs, without doubt, there are signs in those things. But when you're actually giving dawah, it's useful to avoid them because this narrative of evolution is very strong, and you say, well, I didn't even mention living species. I'm talking about a whole arena where evolution does not apply. So what's your explanation?
Right.
So
basically saying that that evolution itself doesn't actually deny that we have a creator, an intelligent creator. Because within the GORAP itself, because we've been talking about the cosmos and our universe, we don't even go into biology.
No, we don't. In other words, evolution does not get a look into GORAP.
Right.
I mean, evolution is a different discussion altogether.
Sure.
Right? But again, it's just effective dawah technique. It's not that it's not a good topic to talk about. It's just that, look, if we can avoid that contentious issue by sidestepping it altogether and show there's more powerful arguments by looking in different areas to accept God's existence, evolution becomes irrelevant. It's an irrelevancy. We're not talking about evolution of species, we're talking about the universe itself. So the examples we give is the alternation of the night and the day, the different gases in the atmosphere, you know, the ozone layer, the composition of water, the distance of the earth from the sun. There's no evolution in that.
Sure. Okay, excellent. So for example, with some atheists, I know we've kind of touched upon this, but one of the key contentions that always bring up is who created God. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that contention?
And you know what? A lot of people have this objection in their mind. Now, as you said, we did cover that, because if we go back to GORAP, when we talked about God's existence, we went from understanding that the universe needs some sort of creator, some sort of intelligence and power behind it. We said that the nature of the creator must be different from the creation.
Right.
Because if the nature of the creator was not different, you'd just have more creation. Now, someone would say, that's fine. Then this creator must have a creator. Right? But then the same question comes. If the nature, we could say, yeah, fine, that's fine as an argument. But then do you agree that the nature of this creator is different from the creation? If they say no, because we're still going to have to end up, you'll see, we'll still have to end up with one unique, self-sufficient, eternal being.
Sure.
Even if you have a thing, you're going to have to get there. We're going to explain why.
Yeah.
We would say to them, okay, did this creator have a creator then? Is it different? Is the nature of this creator different or the same? If they say it's the same, right, then you can ask that question, well, who created that creator? And you can soon imagine you go on, who created the creator, who created the creator, who created the creator, who created the creator, and it goes on and on and on and on, ad infinitum, as they say, forever.
Yeah.
Now, there is a very simple logical reason why that can't happen.
Right.
And I want to give you an example. This is very powerful if you can master this. Imagine there is a sniper, and this sniper has the target in sight. And you say radios back to base.
Yeah.
You know, HQ, target such and such in sight. Now, base says we have to ask higher up.
Yeah.
And higher up says we have to ask higher up. And higher up says I have to ask higher up. And in other words, higher up keeps going higher up.
Yeah.
Now, if that keeps going on and on and on and on, will the sniper ever pull the trigger?
Never.
He'll know, he'll just be waiting for the command forever and ever and ever. So there has to be a place where the command stops.
Stop, yeah.
There has to be someone who issues the command. There has to be. It can't go on forever and ever because the trigger will never be pulled. Now, if we go back to the creation, it's the same thing. Just as the sniper will never pull the trigger, if you have a creator creating a creator creating a creator, the finite universe will never be created. Just it's the same as the trigger will not be pulled, the creation, the universe would not be created.
Right.
But the universe is here, it exists. The fact of the existence of the universe is synonymous to the sniper pulling the trigger. The finite universe must lead us to the belief that there must be an infinite cause of the universe.
Yeah.
Right? And there's good reasons and compelling reasons to believe that infinite cause is intelligent, has wisdom and power and intelligence. So again, it leads us to that conclusion that the nature of the creator must be different from the creation, because an infinite regression of creators creating creators creating creators, it doesn't have existence in reality. It doesn't lead to anything being created, which is also a potential refutation of various other things that, you know, atheists come up with in terms of infinite universes and so on and so forth, because infinity doesn't have existence in reality.
Sure.
It may exist in mathematics, but in the real world, infinity of caused things cannot be.
Sure.
An infinite uncaused being, yes, but not an infinity
Within
of
creation
caused things.
itself.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Abdurraheem, it's been a pleasure to sit with you and mashallah take all this knowledge on board, and hopefully inshallah we can take all this knowledge, practice it, rewatch the whole series, and actually go out and apply all the knowledge we learn, inshallah. And remember, we don't just learn dawah, we have to live the dawah. So jazakallah khair for watching as always. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.